goodie bag. Luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan tonight. In My Big Opinion, a career criminal walks free from court after his XL bully dog brutally attacks an 11-year-old girl. 23 people have been killed by these terrifying animals in the last 3 years and thousands injured. It's time that we had laws with real bite. In the big story, Star Mother Farmer Harmer strikes again as the Prime Minister escapes angry farmers after the Welsh Labour Party conference earlier today. Will this be Sir Keir Starmer's poll tax moment? I'll be asking an angry Welsh farmer shortly. As Alan Partridge, comedian Steve Coogan wows critics in a live theatre version of Dr. Strangelove, does he match up to the comic genius of the film's original star, Peter Sellers? Was Peter Sellers the greatest comedy actor of all time? I'll be asking legendary comedy biographer Robert Ross, whose stunning new book about Peter Sellers is out now. Following Mike Tyson's shambolic fight with an internet star, has boxing become a dangerous joke? I'll be joined by a former champion British boxer. And in an hour's time in My Take at 10, as a traditional Lincolnshire Christmas market is cancelled due to terror fears, and with armed cops policing festive celebrations in Manchester, it's clear to anyone with half a brain that this country and its values and traditions are now under mortal threat, and that is no cause for celebration. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my top pundits this evening: journalist at the political website Guido Fawkes, Ellie Wheatley; veteran writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov; and the former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. So, lots to get through, folks. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. First of all, my big opinion, we've got to deal with those XL bully dogs, and I've got a solution straight after the headlines, and someone whose bark is far worse than her bite, Sophia Wensler.
Mark, thank you. It's just gone 9 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. Kemi Badenoch has said hate crime laws must be reviewed to protect free speech after police launched an investigation into a journalist over a tweet. In an interview with the Telegraph newspaper, the Conservative leader said it was absolutely wrong for the police to visit any journalist's home simply because they had expressed an opinion. Alison Pearson is under investigation by Essex Police for allegedly stirring up racial hatred with a social media post made in November of last year. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson compared police action to that of the Soviet Union in the last century. Sir Keir Starmer has said he will defend the decisions made in the budget all day long amid anger from farmers over inheritance tax changes. The Prime Minister made the comments at his first speech at the Welsh Labour conference in Llandudno. Meanwhile, farmers descended on the conference in protest over changes to inheritance tax. In the changes announced in the budget, farmers who pass on their land will have to pay a 20% tax on assets worth more than £1 million. The Prime Minister defended proposals, saying the government needs to keep explaining how it will work. Plans to force a referendum over the handover of the Chagos Islands could delay the treaty from taking effect until after US President-elect Donald Trump takes office. Lord Bellingham is leading a group of peers who plan to introduce an amendment to the treaty when it reaches the House of Lords to require a vote of Chagosians to approve it. US President Joe Biden's administration agreed the deal with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's government, but Mr Trump's team is reportedly opposed to it and could look for a way to scrap it. A woman's body has been found in the boot of a car in East London. Detectives said a murder inquiry has now been launched into the suspicious discovery in Ilford. The woman, who has not been named but is from Corby in Northamptonshire, may have been a victim of a targeted incident, according to police. Now, more than 400 illegal migrants have arrived in Britain by small boat today, GB News can reveal. It comes a day after we revealed the country had passed the 33,000 mark for migrants arriving in the UK, with official figures showing that 237 people arrived in 4 small boats yesterday. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister announced the arrest of a major supplier of small boats in collaboration with police colleagues in Europe. And across the Atlantic, Mike Tyson says his return to the boxing ring won't be his last after losing to YouTuber Jake Paul by a unanimous decision. Boxing for the first time in 19 years before a Texas crowd, the 58-year-old struggled to match his younger opponents, a man half his age. Streamed on Netflix to the platform's 280 million subscribers, Jake Paul reportedly earned £30 million from the fight and Tyson £15 million from the 8-round fight. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Mark.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Busy show tonight, so you may need a stiff drink. Will the angry farmers be Sir Keir Starmer's poll tax moment? Armed cops at Christmas markets is no cause for celebration. That's my take at 10. You won't want to miss it. And comic genius Peter Sellers remembered before the end of the hour. But we start with my big opinion. Now, do you remember the good old days when the worst thing that would happen with a dog is that your Labrador would nip the ankles of the postman as he delivered your letters? Well, as any number of our army of heroic postmen and women will tell you, any dog does pose a hazard. And there aren't many of us who haven't been at the wrong end of a dachshund's displeasure or a boxer's bite. But something's changed in recent years. Dogs are now being deployed as a weapon. Criminals are buying pit bulls and XL bullies to threaten and intimidate the public and their rivals, and to send a clear message of who is in charge. These animals are often put on treadmills to make them more athletic and given objects to chew on to make their jaws stronger. And of course, they've been genetically bred to harm and kill. Walking down the street with one of these terrifying creatures, whose jaws lock shut like a vice, and they have the power of 2 grown men. Walking down the street with a dog like that should be as unacceptable as walking down the street with a gun or a machete. Instead, these animals are paraded around with impunity, often by very undesirable characters. Like career criminal Farhat Ajaz, whose dog launched a horrific attack on an 11-year-old girl and 2 men. And this is a man who has since walked free from court. He was banned from owning a dog for the rest of his life and made the subject of a restraining order. And having dodged prison, he told reporters he was sorry about what happened. Big deal. Not as sorry as that little girl whose life has been devastated by this attack. And she's not alone. In 2023, police recorded over 30,000 offences of an out-of-control dog causing injury to a person in England and Wales. Now, that is up 21% on 2022. And there have been 23 fatal attacks at the hands of XL bullies in the last 4 years. 23 dead at the hands of a so-called family pet, with some estimating that there are as many as 100,000 of these XL bully dogs currently in the country. Now, as we learned from the Dangerous Dogs Act, banning certain breeds doesn't seem to work as loopholes are exploited. Personally, my mind is open on that one. I don't think that these dogs should be bred or sold whatsoever, but enforcement is difficult. And if so, why not place the emphasis on the owner? If your dog seriously harms someone, especially if it's a known dangerous breed, then you should go to jail. If you own a dangerous animal, quite frankly, you should be in the doghouse and face rough justice. At the moment, the rules are barking mad. I'm really unhappy about these XL bully dogs that are around. You see them in the park, you see them on the street. What do we do about it? gbnews.com/your say. But first, tonight's top pundits. I'm delighted to welcome journalist at the political website Guido Fawkes, Ellie Wheatley, veteran writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, and the former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. Ellie, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
I'm worried about these dogs. What do we do about them?
I know, it's terrifying. I have to say, when I see these sort of dogs on the street, I do walk across to the other side of the pavement, you know, because I think it's terrifying. And also, when you have these owners who have these dogs that are actually uncontrollable, right? It's not, you know, they're bred to be violent. And sometimes, you know, they can't be controlled. You have to place the emphasis on the owner. I mean, these people being let out, you know, being spared jail, what sort of signal does that send to other people who own these violent dogs? I mean, you can just get away with it, can't you?
Yeah, most definitely. Nina, the Dangerous Dogs Act in the 90s didn't really work because there are always loopholes to be exploited. Why not place the onus on the owner?
The owner should be on the owner, absolutely. I loathe these dogs, and there's a clue in what they're called. This particular dog we're talking about that attacked the 11-year-old girl was called Tyson. Yeah. They're always called Satan or Jaws or, you know, it's a clue. But then there should be a way of policing this. Yeah. And they should not be bred, they should not be sold. I quite agree with you, they should not be owned. They are not family pets. This is completely wrong. You know, and the trouble is, this country has gone completely dog mad since the pandemic. You know, dogs are treated like children almost in a way. And I'm not saying necessarily these types of dogs, but dogs are they seem to have just run amok with dogs in this country.
Definitely. I mean, Neil, it started with pit bull terriers in the 90s. I've got no doubt you reported on that when you were at The Sun and the News of the World. There was real concern then about a spate of attacks. Yeah. We don't seem to have progressed much since then.
Well, I think it's worse than we haven't progressed. I think what you are seeing is... have you actually physically stood near one of these damn things? I have.
They're terrifying.
They are the size of this table.
That's right.
And
they're low and wide, aren't they?
Yeah, low and wide. Immensely powerful. And the truth of the matter is,
some of them are scarier than you, Nina, and that's going stuff.
I would sincerely doubt that.
Grant's in the green room. He can confirm my worries.
But a man, even Mike Tyson couldn't hold one of these back if it decided to attack. And as Nina quite rightly, it's unusual for Nina to get something right here, but they are called Tyson for a reason. They are meant to terrify. They are owned to scare other people. They are possessed to make the owner look macho. You know, you talk about the guy who owned that dog. How on earth he didn't get prison is beyond me.
And he's been in the past, by the way. This is a career criminal.
No. He hasn't just been in prison in the past. He served 25 years for violence. He had been in court for harassment of a poor woman. He has a list as long as your arm, and yet he's wandering around. And of course, this dog wasn't on a lead. This dog was running free.
And nobody puts a dog on a lead these days.
And attack this poor kid. One of the things you didn't mention is that two guys tried and failed to get this animal off this child, who is scarred on her shoulder and her arm, and they couldn't do it. And it is staggering that beasts like these, and they are beasts, they're not pet dogs, they are beasts, are allowed on our streets. Shouldn't be allowed.
There are about potentially 100,000 in the country, Nina. I've probably got viewers and listeners who have XL bullies or pit bulls who love their dogs and will say that they're just as good as a Labrador if raised correctly.
If raised correctly, but people forget that they're animals, they're not humans. It's like this should be the same, that the worst we would ever have was a Rottweiler. Do you remember 20 or 30 years ago?
That's right.
A Rottweiler was a thing. People say, oh no, they're such lovely, sweet animals. But any animal could turn, and that's the problem. And talking about this guy who was spared prison, there's obviously things we don't necessarily know. You have to ask what the judge knew.
Yes, I think his health issues were one reason why he was spared.
He also pleaded guilty. He seemed remorseful, and the judge said that there was no good purpose to put him in jail. I mean, he's not going to be rehabilitated. But the thing is, we don't know how serious his health issues are.
I don't care, to be honest.
I understand that, but you have to put this in the context of the fact that our prisons are full.
Ellie,
they are full.
Do you think this man should be in jail?
Absolutely, but also he's not the only one. About 5 days ago, another man who owned a dog, it wasn't a pit bull, but it mauled a 7-year-old girl, again, off the leash. The father tried to intervene. I mean, other people tried to intervene. It was apparently absolutely traumatic for the father. You know, he hears his daughter's screams at night, is what he was telling the court. And again, spared jail. The owner was spared jail.
What would you say to those who would argue that a Jack Russell that was raised badly could do just as much damage?
Well, I mean,
are you
biology. No, it's biology, isn't it?
The big jaws.
Well,
the
lockjaw. You see them, the lockjaw. They're really muscly and violent. They have different breeds.
But there really is an issue, which is people's refusal to accept the potential danger of their dog, particularly monsters like these. But just this morning, a friend of mine was telling me a dog they had it was a greyhound, Rehound's greyhound, they'd had for 2.5 years, gorgeous dog, suddenly turned.
Yeah.
And it bit and mauled the woman of the house, and they had to have it rehomed.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's often what happens. I mean, if we have tougher laws, actually it protects owners of these dogs too, because they're vulnerable. Because all too often, Ellie, it's a cousin that comes round to the home and is in a room with this animal, and then it turns.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was brought up, I was always told, don't go near dogs you don't know necessarily.
Yeah.
But also, even the ones you do, you never know. They might turn. As you say, Nina, they are animals.
They are animals.
They're nearly as bad as journalists.
We've forgotten this, though. We've forgotten this.
Oh, definitely. Well, look, I'm delighted to say that Nina, Ellie and Neil are back shortly to discuss whether boxing has become something of a farce after the influencer versus Mike Tyson fight last night. But first, time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to win the equivalent of having an extra £3,000 in your bank account each month for the next year. That's a whopping £36,000, 36 grand in tax-free cash. Here are the details you'll need.
This is your good luck.
OK, coming up next in the big story, Starmer the farmer harmer strikes again as the Prime Minister escapes angry farmers after the Welsh Labour Party conference earlier today. So will this be Sir Keir's poll tax moment? I'll be asking a Welsh farmer live on the show next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. But let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And for the next nearly 400 years, had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, a big response to my big opinion. I'm deeply concerned about the dangerous dogs that are walking our streets. I think the owners use them as weapons, just like a gun or a knife, especially the XL bully dogs. Terrible story of an 11-year-old attacked. The owner walks free from court. Ian on the message board, gbnews.com/yoursay, says XL bully dogs are not dogs. They are penis extensions. Castration for the owners, perhaps a bit OTT, but not much, says Ian. Adrian says, people say it's how dogs are brought up, but there is a streak in the XL bully, and if they turn, it's life-threatening. They need banning altogether. One death of a child, for instance, is enough. OK, folks, I'll get to more of your messages very shortly, but time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big story, and Starmer the farmer harmer strikes again as the Prime Minister escapes angry farmers after the Welsh Labour Party conference earlier today. There was a remarkable blockade and lots of tractors and farm vehicles pitched up at Labour Party conference in Wales because the farmers are not happy. So will this be Sir Keir's poll tax moment? Let's speak to Councillor Alan Thomas, a Welsh farmer himself, a Pembrokeshire councillor, and Wales chair of the Conservative Rural Forum. Councillor, good to see you. Can you tell me about the atmosphere at that demonstration today?
Yeah, good evening, Mark. Well, I actually wasn't at the demonstration there myself. It takes, after 25 long years of devolution in Wales under Labour, it would take me longer to get to North Wales from where I am than it would to get to London. But in general, the atmosphere here in Wales and at that protest and just in farming in general is really quite miserable and dim at the moment. And it's in stark contrast to, we actually had the Welsh Conservative Conference in Llandudno back in February or March. And there was a similar protest, but more of a show of support just from farmers in that area wanting the government to listen to them. And Rishi Sunak came out, he was amongst the farmers, talking to them. Stark contrast to what we've seen today with Keir Starmer slipping out the back door. And I think it sums up his premiership quite accurately.
Now, Aled, for those not affected, why are farmers so angry about this inheritance tax raid?
Well, I think one of the main reasons that farmers are really angry about this is it's a clear, broken promise. There was assurances, promises given on the run-up to the election that they would categorically not do this. It's a broken promise, full stop. The other thing is many people say to me is, well, according to Keir Starmer's own logic and Rachel Reeves's logic, farmers aren't working people, because, of course, they're saying they haven't raised tax on working people. Well, tell that to many farmers who will still be out there right now working the fields, looking after animals, and probably through the night doing so. So there's this general class war attack that they're pushing on farmers. And then I suppose a third reason, and why it's really an issue that the whole of the UK should be worried about, is it's an attack on food security. It's a total misunderstanding from, an office desk in Downing Street about how the rural economy and how British food works. And that is why people are really angry about it, because it's just a total misunderstanding of what farmers do, what farmers provide, the ancillary businesses that come under agriculture in general. And it was actually highlighted today to me that where does human waste go after it's been treated? Because actually it's farmers that take that back in and make sure it's recycled correctly. And, it's just this total misunderstanding of the total business of agriculture. And that's why people are so annoyed.
And we definitely know that farmers are working people. My Uncle Ted ran a dairy farm in Ireland for many years. It's back-breaking work. It's 24/7. Look, it's 9:30 on a Saturday night and you're in the cow shed. That shows your commitment to the cause. However, what would you say, Aled, to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, who argue that they don't want to introduce this new tax, this inheritance tax on farmers, but they've inherited a broken economy from the Conservatives, your party?
Well, I'd say, of course, that it's total rubbish. They inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7, of course. But if you actually look at the figures of how much money this policy is going to raise to the Treasury, in the grand scheme of things, it's total peanuts in comparison to the other taxes raises they've done, for example, the national insurance contributions. This is nothing more than an attack on class. It's a division between the kind of the urban voter and the rural voter. And that's what Labour are after here. If I was talking to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves today, or they wanted to meet me tomorrow, I would urge them to U-turn on this policy. And I think everyone would welcome that. And they wouldn't be, I for one certainly then wouldn't call Keir Starmer weak for U-turning all the time. But I think that they've tied themselves into a corner here, because how do they turn on one policy and then, leave the pensioners cold all winter? It's a total mess in terms of their communication. But I would just urge them to sit down with the union, sit down with the NFU, and just sit down with farmers across the country and listen to what they're saying, because what they're saying is quite serious.
Well, of course, Labour have argued that, yes, while there might be economic growth that was inherited from the last government, there was the deficit, which, of course, means that more is going out than comes in every month. There's the national debt, which has swollen. And there's the £20 billion black hole that Rachel Reeves has talked about. Also, the government have argued that this will only affect a tiny minority of farmers. What do you say to that?
Well, what I would say is the government clearly haven't got their own story straight on this. The Treasury are saying one thing, but DEFRA data says something totally different. It says that 66% of farms are going to be affected by this policy. And I think it just goes to show, again, another misunderstanding of how agriculture works. They see that top-line figure and are using it to kind of create this division. This shed that we're standing in right now alone cost nearly £400,000 to build. So, of course, when you add all that in, we haven't even There's other sheds, of course, on the farm and looking at land outside. It's just an understanding of how agriculture works. They're just looking at figures, top-line figures, £1 million, £2 million, and trying to use that to create that division between voters.
Well, let me tell you, Aled, I back the farmers all the way, and so do all of my colleagues here at GB News. Last question before you go, before you get back to the milking and the slurry and all the rest of it. Do you think, Aled, that there's a wider global effort to attack farmers with net zero policies and the idea, for example, of eating less meat?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons, again, I think it's a side note of why this policy is kind of being steamrolled through here in the UK. I think that they actually want farmers to sell their land and get small farmers and family farms out of business so that they can plaster the countryside in lots of solar panels. But at the end of the day, that might, in a sense, solve our energy crisis. But we've just then created a major food crisis in the UK. And I know I'd rather have food to eat than perhaps if I have to go without electricity for one night, but I'd certainly know which one I would pick if I had to make that choice. So I think you're right, but I think that again shows a total, lack of understanding of how much agriculture has changed. We've had one industrial revolution, in the past sort of century. I can say that agriculture has gone through several revolutions. That the way that agriculture is now, the use of AI technologies to make sure that cauliflowers and cabbages are weeding correctly. But this isn't seen, in the UK general public. There's no agriculture on our curriculums. And until we get things like that and people understand what's happening, I'm afraid that we're going to see more kind of barmy policies like this coming through.
Aled, a real treat to have you on the show. My thanks to Councillor Aled Thomas, the thinking man's Jeremy Clarkson. OK, folks, coming up with tonight's top pundits, following Mike Tyson's shambolic fight with an internet star, has boxing become a dangerous joke? I'll be joined by a former champion British boxer next.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So the north-south split across the UK continues with some cloudier skies and some patchy rain in the south, but some colder and wintry weather further north. We do have a weather front situated across the southern half of the UK, continues to sink its way southwards through the rest of the day today, but those northerly winds bringing some colder conditions across parts of Scotland. We'll continue to see showers across the north and the west, and these likely to turn to snow and sleet over any high ground. Further south, though, that weather front continues to push its way southwards, leaving some clear skies to start the morning on Sunday across much of England and Wales, and quite widely a chilly start to the day on Sunday, temperatures widely in the low single figures, and some frost likely across parts of Scotland and northern England to start the day. Further south, though, generally quite a dry and bright start to the day once that weather front clears its way southwards. Some sunny spells across much of England to start the day on Sunday. For Wales, a little bit of a cloudier start, some outbreaks of patchy rain, and for Northern Ireland too, quite a bit of cloud around to start the day on Sunday. Northern parts of England into eastern parts of Scotland, though, a bright but chilly start to the day. Western Scotland continuing to see those wintry showers pushing in, and the northeast of Scotland as well, seeing those showers continuing through much of Sunday morning. Those showers again likely to turn to sleet and snow, particularly across any high ground of Scotland as we go through Sunday afternoon. Those cloudy conditions across Northern Ireland, and that area of rain continues to push its way eastwards into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into northern parts of England through Sunday afternoon. The south still holding on to some slightly milder air, so feeling pleasant in any sunshine here, but further north with those brisk northerly winds definitely feeling cold. That does mean a cold start to the day on Monday. Those wintry showers continuing to pack in across northern parts of Scotland. But for Northern Ireland, Wales into northern parts of England, we see this area of rain pushing in. And where that meets that colder air, they're likely to see some sleet and snow over the hills. Staying cold as we head in towards the middle part of next week, but there should be some sunshine around. But those temperatures feeling chilly for the time of year.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry, tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. The comic genius Peter Sellers, remembered in just a few minutes. Brilliant new book out about Peter Sellers. We'll do that before 10. But first, it was billed as the fight of the century. Heavyweight legend Iron Mike Tyson, aged 58, up against social media influencer Jake Paul, a man half his age at 27. The YouTube star won the bout via a unanimous points decision. But this controversial fight arguably failed to live up to the hype. Boos could be heard from the crowd in the final 2 rounds after a perceived lack of action. So was this an entertaining spectacle or proof that boxing has become a dangerous joke? Well, we'll get to my pundits in just a moment, but first let's get the views of British boxing legend Ben Jones, former WBO European featherweight champion and IBO International Lightweight Champion. Ben, welcome to the show. Now, your energy in the ring earned you the nickname Duracell, but was last night's fight a bit undercharged?
It was very undercharged, yes. So for me, yes, I sort of thought it was going to be like that, to be honest. It was, it lived up to what I thought it was going to be. It's a shame, massive shame, but there you go. It's, that's what boxing's come to, I'm afraid. It's a circus in that way.
I mean, Mike Tyson, Ben, is one of the all-time greats, isn't he? Has he damaged his legacy with this fight?
I hope not. Mike Tyson, for me, growing up, was a complete legend. This is what I really hoped wouldn't happen. He, to me, was my superhero, you know, but can I knock him for the amount of money he made? Maybe not, but it makes boxing look bad in my eyes. So, yes, bit of a shame.
Indeed. I mean, do we know what kind of cash he might have achieved last night, even though he lost, Ben?
Apparently £20 million.
My goodness.
And you offer me that and maybe I'd get back in, well, I would get back in the ring for that. So there you go. So can I knock him? No, I can't knock him. But on the other side of it, there's other people, that boxing promoters and stuff, that should maybe say, this man's 58 years old. This could be dangerous and bad for boxing. So maybe some people should get involved more.
Well, indeed. I mean, do you feel that putting a celebrity in the ring, does it demean the great skill that athletes like you have? And does it demean boxing altogether?
100%. Well, we work so. I mean, I'm retired now myself, and I won't get back in there. I've only been out the ring 5-6 years, so, and I would not get back in there. You need plenty of time. You need 3 hours of training a day. You need so much, and for him to get back in there after all this time out, it's upsetting, really. For such an amazing character, an amazing man of boxing, this is not what I wanted to see, really, you know. And it proved everything I said it was going to be. As people said, "Oh, he's going to be great," because I remember him from what he was. That's not what he is now. He's a different man. He's an old. He's a granddad. I'm sorry, but he's a granddad now. You know, he shouldn't be in there. It's time to stop.
And now stay with us, Ben. Let's bring in my pundits if we can. We have Nina Mishkoff, Ellie Wheatley and Neil Wallace. Ben, let me just ask you, were you impressed by Jake Paul's performance? I mean, he did win. He didn't embarrass himself, did he, given that he's not a professional boxer?
He's not a professional boxer, and no, he didn't embarrass himself. But this isn't boxing. This isn't what it's all about. He wouldn't, in, say, British boxing, wouldn't get to maybe area level. Maybe it'd be an area, could be area, but not even British champion. So fighting someone who's a legend of Mike Tyson to take away, in some ways, his name, no, this isn't what it should be about. It's a circus, and there's huge amounts of money to be made for something that shouldn't be, you know? It's dangerous. It is dangerous, yes, 100%.
Now, Neil, you used to edit the News of the World. You also worked at The Sun. These papers are very much sold on the sports pages, aren't they? So based upon your background in the world of sort of sports journalism, was last night a farce or a great spectacle?
Well, Actually, it was both, wasn't it? Because it turned out the people, apparently there was something like 70,000 people paid £14 million to go into that arena in Dallas to watch that fight, but it was an absolute farce. If you put that influencer against, as our boxing friend there will tell you, the current world heavyweight champion Daniel Dubois, Daniel Dubois would knock his head off in about 1.5 rounds. But the question is really, should we be looking at boxing still as a sport? I don't believe you can call what happened last night a sport. It was more like something out of a Roman gladiators fight. And, you know, he's 58 years old. The other guy's 30 years younger than him. They made the ring bigger so that Tyson could escape. They put him in heavier gloves, which meant the impact wasn't so hard. And from the reports that I read today, essentially, the influencer spent the last 2 or 3 rounds simply trying not to hurt Tyson. Is that good for Tyson's long-term reputation? I don't believe so. Did it put bums on seats? Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I mean, Nina, a bit of harmless fun?
I've always loathed boxing. I've always thought, and I still think that it's. Neil said it's not now a sport. It's never been a sport. It's legalised violence and should be banned as a sport. It's the only contact sport. I mean, rugby is dangerous. You can get yourself really hurt with rugby. But boxing is the only sport, so-called sport, where your aim is to inflict brain damage on your opponent, because that's what a knockout is. So somebody gets knocked out in the first round or whatever round. That is brain damage, and it's brutal. It's macho. It's bloodthirsty. It has nothing to do with sport. And Ben, you know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to demean your career. You've made wonderful achievements, and you are and were obviously a great athlete. But how you can say that Mike Tyson was your hero when his personal life was so disgraceful, that is a mystery to me.
Well, he's certainly done some very bad things in the past. I'm sure that Ben would not defend those. Ben, legalised violence. Nina's not happy about boxing altogether. Your response to that?
My response to that, first of all, Mike Tyson, I'm only praising his boxing ability, not his side of out of the boxing ring. So I'm totally with that. Boxing in general, maybe you should speak to mums and dads that have young kids that box, because you know what, I've got a little 10-year-old now that's boxing. She's a little girl, and you know what, for a parent, boxing, especially as amateur, is so well looked after and so well policed. And you know what, it gives respect to children. And you know what, boxers are never the bully. It's the weirdest thing. It's hard when you're not in boxing. If you actually was in boxing, you would actually go, wow, I didn't realise it was like that. I got much more hurt in football and rugby and other sports than I ever did in boxing.
I totally agree with you, Ben.
Like to see that side.
If I was Prime Minister, I would subsidise towns and cities so that there is a boxing club in every neighbourhood. I think boxing is brilliant for the community. It's clearly been brilliant for you, Ben. A couple of seconds, if you can, Ellie. Does last night set the dangerous precedent of putting an amateur into a boxing ring?
Well, I think the point is that boxing has now become a lot less professional, but a lot more popular. I mean, if you look at social media, I mean, we're talking about it tonight, right? Many more people are watching boxing now. I mean, I think 120 million people viewed it on Netflix last night, even though it was at 4 a.m. in the morning in the UK. Yeah. I think the reports, though, of this fight, it was just pity for Tyson, which was really tragic, actually. And actually, I think it does damage his legacy. But I think the point is it's becoming much more popular amongst the younger generation, despite the fact that it is these influencers and YouTubers who are doing it.
Fair enough. Ben, lovely to have you on the show. A real privilege. My thanks to British boxing legend Ben Jones. The brilliant stuff you've achieved in the wing.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, a pleasure to have you. And congratulations on a great career, Ben. We'll catch up soon, I hope. There you go. Another British hero on the show. Duracell, that's how he's known. Well, I'm a bit of a Duracell bunny myself, and I've got loads of energy for the next interview. We will remember the late, great Peter Sellers in Mark Meets next.
This This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The number of pubs may reach critically low levels.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing is a decline in the number of pubs in Britain, and it's fallen. This is an absolutely astonishing figure. So it's basically fallen 10% in a decade. So you know, do our maths. It doesn't take very long for that to happen. So if that carries on, we'd have, get this, only 1,000 pubs by 2074. So the big question is, what will become extinct first? The bank branch on your high street, or the pub on your street corner? And this is a kind of perfect storm for landlords and landladies of, you know, the cost of labour. We saw, I mean, remember when the energy prices were at the high, we just realised just how much energy it keeps to keep the lights on in the local boozer. Yeah. As well as, you know, as the cost of the golden nectar itself. So, as they call it in Australia.
Well, talking about that, I was mentioning the other day to, was it my father-in-law? I said, I used to, when I first started going to the pub, I was 15, they...
Okay.
Half a lemonade, half a shandy.
I was nearly 16, I got half a shandy. No, we used to have Monday Club, where a pint of Foster's was £1.50. And my father-in-law was saying, I went to London the other day, a pint was £8.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And when you've got those kind of prices, why wouldn't you just go down the supermarket and get 16 tinnies for £5?
So you're going all Aussie now. Put the tinnies in the esky before you have the bar.
Good day, mate. Why not?
I agree, actually. I think it's concerning. A lot of people look at the high streets and they're very concerned that it's looking quite glum, to be honest. You know, lots of things are closing. But the reality is, it's because people are not buying from the high street. They're not going to the pub, you know. People are just deciding, you know, what they're going to do in their spare time. Are they really going to go to the pub? Or are they going to potentially go to, you know, David Lloyd or a Nuffield, you know, join a gym membership? They're just looking at their expenses and just deciding, you know what, we're going to actually cut costs, you know.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Why have Christmas markets become a war zone? That is my take at 10, but first this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, and as Alan Partridge comedian Steve Coogan wows critics in a live theatre version of Dr. Strangelove, does he match up to the comic genius of the film's original star, Peter Sellers? Well, a brand new book about this iconic star of radio, television and the big screen has just been released. It is called Best Sellers. Peter Sellers, A Life in Comedy. It is by the renowned British comedy author Robert Ross. Now, before we chat, here is Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau in The Pink Panther, having just checked into a rather unfriendly Swiss hotel.
Does your dear go bad? No? Oh. Yes, dear good. I thought you said your dog did not bite. That is not my dog.
I mean, gold, comedy gold. Here's the book, and I'm delighted to say that the author of Best Sellers, Robert Ross, is with me now. Robert, great to have you on the show. Peter Sellers came from humble beginnings, didn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, he was born into a show business family, so you know they were fairly well off, but they were travelling around the country, and he was born in Portsmouth, down in Hampshire, and he was taken on to stage by his mother at a very young age, a babe in arms, because she knew, being a showbiz veteran, that a baby would get a reaction from the audience. So he was almost born in a trunk into show business, and he really did do everything in the theatre. He would sweep the stage, and he would sort of mend costumes and sell tickets. You know, he loved the theatre, so that was his life, really. So hence why I called the book A Life in Comedy, because he spent his entire all too brief life making the world laugh.
Absolutely. Now, in the book, you tell the amazing story of how he managed to get into BBC comedy using his power of impersonation over the phone. What did he do exactly?
Well, this was it. This was his showbiz shtick. He was an impersonator. He was a drummer first of all, but then he, in between doing numbers, he made people laugh by doing silly voices. So he phoned a producer at the BBC, a gentleman called Roy Spear, who was a light entertainment producer, and he pretended to be the great broadcaster of the time, Kenneth Horne, who went on to be in Round the Horn on radio, comedy great. This producer, Roy Spear, was convinced it was Kenneth Horne speaking, and Peter Sellers, as Kenneth Horne, was saying, "You must try this wonderful new comedian called Peter Sellers. I've seen him perform. He's terrific. My friend here, Richard Murdoch, Dickie Murdoch's here as well." Peter Sellers, being Dickie Murdoch, who used to work with Arthur Askey on radio, saying, "Yes, I saw him too. He's a wonderful comic, this Peter Sellers." And he lost his bottle, Peter. He broke down and said, "Actually, Mr. Spears, this is Peter Sellers speaking." And he said, "My God, if you're that good, you should be on." And he actually made his first broadcasting appearance on television in the very early days of TV. So yes, a star was born by his own cheek, really.
He was a crazy talent, a generational talent, wasn't he? Can you give us a sense of how big a star he ultimately became?
Well, I mean, you know, you mentioned Dr. Strangelove there. Famously, Steve Coogan is outdoing Peter Sellers. He's playing 4 parts instead of the 3 that Peter Sellers played in the film. But Stanley Kubrick, who directed the film, paid him £1 million for that film in 1963. And he famously said it was 3 performances for the price of 6. But, you know, you've got to imagine it was only 2 years since the Goon Show had finished. So he went from being, you know, a reasonably sort of okay paid radio comic to becoming the world's greatest funny man, really. So, you know, by the mid-1960s, he was a Hollywood, you know, international star, doing films for Blake Edwards, the Pink Panthers and The Party, those sort of films, in a very quick time, from, you know, 3 or 4 years from, as I say, just being a run-of-the-mill, really, you know, BBC radio comic, to becoming this legend of the silver screen.
Well,
it almost killed him, to be fair. I mean,
did you say it almost killed him? In what sense?
It almost killed him, yeah. I mean, he worked so hard to get to this sort of superstardom that at the age of 38, he had a string of massive heart attacks and was pretty much dead. And he came back, and hence why, if you look at the book, in the mid-1970s, he made some quite, I suppose, eccentric choices, but he was just purely living for the fun. He was lucky to be alive, quite frankly. So he would then go back to work with old mates like Spike Milligan and Eric Sykes and Hattie Jakes, just to amuse himself, really. And thankfully, you know, most of the work he leaves behind still amuses today.
Well, definitely. I mean, the Goon Show was incredible. That was iconic. That was such a big show in the history of British radio comedy. Inspector Clouseau, what a franchise. I mean, we spoke earlier and you said that was really nearly as big as James Bond at the time. And the anticipation for the new Pink Panther movie to come out was colossal. So a great career, an extraordinary talent, but he was a complex man too, wasn't he? How so?
Well, you know, all the great comedy brains, be it Spike Milligan or Tony Hancock, they all had sort of feet of clay, really. And Peter, you know, I suppose now would have sort of mental health issues, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, like Robin Williams and all these brilliant comedians, they had their demons, but they managed to sort of channel it into their work. And I'm convinced that he would not be as brilliantly funny if he was just a normal person, inverted commas. You know, he had this wonderful talent to amuse, and he really did channel all that sort of angst. And you know, also he's of that wonderful generation, the war generation, and they lived through a time in their lives alongside his fellow goons, Harry Seacombe and Michael Benteen and Spike Milligan, every day could have been their last, you know, during those early 40s days. So to come through that, you know, relatively unscathed. I mean, I think Spike Milligan left his sanity behind in the war years, but, you know, it drove the Goon Show into being this sort of wonderfully anarchic, anti-authority comedy, you know, with gloriously outrageous characters that Peter Sellers played so well. And, you know, this was the gift he had to just become these characters. I remember speaking to Harry Seacombe. He would say that Peter Sellers would actually literally become the characters on radio in front of a live audience, but he would sort of like become wizened to play Henry Crun, or he'd bloat himself up to become Bloodknot.
Yeah.
You know, he really became those characters, and it was an absolute more than a touch of genius about Peter Sellers.
Well, I think so. I think the word genius is overused. It's worthy in his case. And, of course, not just a brilliant comic actor, great improviser as well. A lot of those Inspector Clouseau jokes were improvised on set. Herbert Lom said that. And then, of course, a brilliant serious actor, too. Being there, he nearly won the Oscar for. All of it is in the book. I urge my viewers and listeners to buy a copy. It's the perfect Christmas present. Let me tell you that bestsellers... Peter Sellers, A Life in Comedy, is by the renowned British comedy author Robert Ross. It's out now. And, Robert, let's catch up soon. And next time, let's talk about the carry-ons.
Oh, can't wait, please. I must say, it's published by Great Northern Books, so search that out and you will find it. It's just perfect Christmas stocking size, this book. So thank you.
Most definitely. Well, I'm halfway through it, and I'm loving it. There you go. Bestsellers is out now. Thank you, Robert. We needed to smile, didn't we? Genius of Clouseau. Next up, why have Christmas markets turned into a war zone? I'll explain in 2 minutes.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So the north-south split across the UK continues, with some cloudier skies and some patchy rain in the south, but some colder and wintry weather further north. We do have a weather front situated across the southern half of the UK, continues to sink its way southwards through the rest of the day today, but those northerly winds bring us some colder conditions across parts of Scotland. We'll continue to see showers across the north and the west, and these likely to turn to snow and sleet over any high ground. Further south, though, that weather front continues to push its way southwards, leaving some clear skies to start the morning on Sunday across much of England and Wales, and quite widely a chilly start to the day on Sunday, temperatures widely in the low single figures, and some frost likely across parts of Scotland and northern England to start the day. Further south, though, generally quite a dry and bright start to the day once that weather front clears its way southwards. Some sunny spells across much of England to start the day on Sunday. For Wales, a little bit of a cloudier start, some outbreaks of patchy rain, and for Northern Ireland too, quite a bit of cloud around to start the day on Sunday. Northern parts of England into eastern parts of Scotland, though, a bright but chilly start to the day. Western Scotland continuing to see those wintry showers pushing in, and the northeast of Scotland as well, seeing those showers continuing through much of Sunday morning. Those showers again likely to turn to sleet and snow, particularly across any high ground of Scotland as we go through Sunday afternoon. Those cloudy conditions across Northern Ireland, and that area of rain continues to push its way eastwards into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into northern parts of England through Sunday afternoon. The south still holding on to some slightly milder air, so feeling pleasant in any sunshine here, but further north with those brisk northerly winds definitely feeling cold. That does mean a cold start to the day on Monday. Those wintry showers continuing to pack in across northern parts of Scotland. But for Northern Ireland, Wales, into northern parts of England, we see this area of rain pushing in. And where that meets that colder air, they're likely to see some sleet and snow over the hills. Staying cold as we head in towards the middle part of next week, but there should be some sunshine around. But those temperatures feeling chilly for the time of year.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, as a traditional Lincolnshire Christmas market is cancelled due to terror threats, and with an armed cop offensive policing the festive celebrations in Manchester, it's clear to anyone with half a brain cell that this country and its values and traditions are now under mortal threat, and that is no cause for celebration. Also developing tonight, it's been revealed a furious row has broken out between King Charles and Prince Harry. That's right, King Charles and Prince Harry over the Duke's war on Fleet Street. Plus, King Charles at 76. Will Harry spoil the party? Plus, how are woke Hollywood celebrities coping with the news of Donald Trump's election victory? Have they left the country yet? I'll be asking the queen of US royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and my brilliant pundits tonight. This evening, we have journalist at the political website Guido Fawkes, Ellie Wheatley, veteran writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkoff, and the former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. Christmas markets, like a war zone, are a worrying proof of what's happening to this country. I'll be explaining what's happening and what's going on straight after the news headlines and Sophia Wensler.
Mark, thank you. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your headlines. Some breaking news to start with. The woman found dead in a car boot in East London has been named as 24-year-old Corby resident Harshita Brella. She was reported missing by the authorities after Northamptonshire police conducted a welfare check at her home in Skegness Walk in Corby, and they got no answer. Detectives said a murder inquiry has now been launched into the suspicious discovery in Ilford. No arrests have yet been made, but police have said they believe Harshita was attacked by someone known to her, although they are keeping an open mind. Kemi Badenoch has said hate crime laws must be reviewed to protect free speech after police launched an investigation into a journalist over a tweet. In an interview with the Telegraph newspaper, the Conservative leader said it was absolutely wrong for the police to visit any journalist's home simply because they had expressed an opinion. Alison Pearson is under investigation by Essex Police for allegedly stirring up racial hatred with a social media post made in November of last year. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson compared police action to that of the Soviet Union in the last century. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has said he will defend the decisions made in the budget all day long amid anger from farmers over inheritance tax changes. The Prime Minister made the comments at his first speech as Prime Minister at the Welsh Labour Conference in Llandudno. Meanwhile, farmers descended on the conference in protest over changes to inheritance tax. In the changes announced in the budget, farmers who pass on their land will have to pay a 20% tax on assets worth more than £1 million. The Prime Minister defended proposals, saying the government needs to keep explaining how it will work. To Europe now, where Germany's Chancellor has challenged Vladimir Putin over what sources describe as a grave escalation in the war in Ukraine. Olaf Scholz spoke to the Russian president for more than an hour, ending the Western isolation of the country in place since 2022. The Chancellor condemned Russia's invasion of its neighbour while criticising the deployment of North Korean troops to the conflict, promising to continue supporting Ukraine until it can achieve a just and lasting peace. Meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky has said Ukraine must do everything to ensure the war ends next year through diplomacy, adding that the war will end sooner with Donald Trump as president. And more than 400 illegal migrants have arrived in Britain by small boat today. It comes a day after we revealed the country had passed the 33,000 mark for migrant arrivals, with official figures showing that 237 people arrived in 4 small boats yesterday. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister announced the arrest of a major supplier of small boats in collaboration with police colleagues in Europe. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Mark.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
King Charles and Prince Harry at war. But first, my take at 10. Remember when Christmas fairs were the highlight of the season? Mulled wine, Christmas carols, mince pies, roasted chestnuts, toffee apples that used to get stuck on your teeth. Absolutely wonderful. Well, Manchester police rather killed the Yuletide spirit by posting on the social media site X that the Christmas markets in Manchester this year will see a heightened police presence with armed cops on hand to tackle any threats. Has it come to this, that the celebration of our Christian heritage and an event aimed at the entire family, including small children, must resemble a war zone? Well, following the Manchester Arena attack, 7-Eleven and London Bridge, that is exactly what Britain has become. We are at war and the enemy is within. Now, whilst the vast majority of people that have come into this country make a huge contribution, this nation has always been a melting pot, and I myself am the son of immigrants, there is a small but dangerous minority who have made their home in the United Kingdom and who have had families here, who hate the values of this place and everything that it represents. It means that, for example, a popular Christmas fair in Lincolnshire has been cancelled due to concerns about a possible terror threat. Now, this wonderful fair, which has been going for 25 years and is run by the Rotary Club of Woodhall Spa, with revellers enjoying homemade jam, cheeses, Christmas puddings and other festive delights, won't happen this year because the authorities have considered the risk to the public of an ideological extremist trying to come in and kill everyone. They think the risk of that happening is now too high. So is this what our heroes of World War I and World War II died for? Their great motivation was freedom and democracy. And we now have a minority element in this country that wants to kill its own citizens because they belong to a death cult that we've done precious little to address, mainly because of woke political correctness and the attachment to the mantra that diversity is our strength. Now, diversity is our strength, but not when some in our flock seek, and I quote, death to the West. Now, some have complained that the authorities have overreacted to the terror threat, as this event only lasts for 4 hours every evening and only attracts around 4,000 people to its 110 stalls. The Rotary Club of Woodhall Spa do a fantastic job, but they've said on their website that over the years, health and safety requirements have become increasingly onerous, And they feel that this year, even following the completion of a 67-page health and safety compliance document, that the event just isn't viable. Well, we've been here before. Last year, Lincoln Christmas Market, the oldest Christmas market in the UK, was cancelled over similar health and safety fears. We can't have anything nice anymore, can we? Now, I understand that the authorities are concerned about our safety. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. It's hard to get cross with the council, the police or the organisers because the risk is real. The same goes for Christmas markets in Germany, France, Holland and elsewhere. But this sorry tale just demonstrates how the traditions of this country and the values that underpin it are being chipped away. Even the word Christmas has been cancelled by companies and local authorities in favour of the generic Happy Holidays, which makes me want to vomit. It is Christmas. Perhaps poor old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is on an ISIS hit list. What a pitiful state we are in when you can't have a Christmas market without concrete barriers being erected to stop a mad extremist mowing everyone down in a 4x4. This is what happens when you don't police the streets or when you don't police British values. Like when the authorities turn a blind eye to hateful anti-Semitism at those so-called peace marches we've seen every weekend, with people openly calling for holy war and the elimination of Israel, all without censure, sometimes in front of the cenotaph, which is there to remember our war dead. Meanwhile, one of the country's leading journalists, the brilliant Alison Pearson, is visited by cops on Remembrance Sunday for allegedly writing something unkind on the internet. Soon, poor old Father Christmas will be cancelled for fear that that bulging sack of his could put his back out. Christmas is coming, folks, and I don't want socks or aftershave. I want our country back. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. But first, tonight's top pundits. Journalist at the political website Guido Fawkes, which celebrates its 20th anniversary this week, Ellie Wheatley. Veteran writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. And the former executive editor of the News of the World, the brilliant Neil Wallace. Nina Mishkov, what does it tell us about modern Britain that Christmas markets need armed cops?
I think we're the same as many places around the world. And in fact, you know, decades ago, we had the IRA here. I was standing in Harrods just the week before Christmas, back in the 70s, buying some last-minute, you know, gift wrap and stuff like that. Nice. And it was on the ground floor.
So even then you were a woman of means?
I don't think I really was, but I mean, I was buying sort of ribbon and wrap. That was it. That wasn't too much.
I think the prices at Harrods, they weren't silly in those days, were they?
No, they were absolutely fine. They weren't bad. Anyway,
pre-Al Fayed. Anyway, let's not go there.
Let's not go there. So I was standing in a queue waiting to pay, and suddenly about a dozen police just barreled through the door and ran through and said, "Everybody out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out!" And I just dropped what I was holding and ran and then by the time I'd got, well, it was maybe 200 or 300 yards down the road, there were police everywhere. There were people just running and people screaming. Bomb went off, and that was then. That was in the 70s. So we're talking, what, 50 years ago?
Yeah, and was that the IRA?
Yes, IRA, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it was ever thus. We've always faced terror threats, haven't we, Ellie? But Christmas markets, armed cops in Manchester, they're doing their best to keep us safe, but it tells us that we're losing grip of what this country is.
Absolutely. I mean, we are a Christian country with Christian values, and we should be unapologetic in celebrating them. And, of course, Christmas market, etc. I mean, what does it tell us when we're kowtowing to the tyranny of the minority? As you say, that, you know, the small minority of people who are a threat, but that our authorities, the government, the police, they're giving in, right? And actually, I think we need to have an honest conversation about the real issue here. Is why is there a threat, you know?
And why do they target things like Christmas markets?
Exactly, and it just shows that integration hasn't worked, especially in some of these cities, and like in Manchester, etc. So, I mean, for example, the Mail the other day revealed that there are loads of foreign nationals who are in the UK who are mass murderers and they're terrorists, and they cannot be deported because of the ECHR. Now, whether or not leaving the ECHR would help us deport them is another topic of debate. However, it does show we need to be doing something about this so we can be unapologetic in our Christian values, be able to celebrate Christmas markets.
You say Christian values, but even the Church of England, let's not go into the Archbishop of Canterbury and any of that. There's many topics we can't go into. Has stated that we're now a secular country. I mean, fewer than 50% of people go to church, and that's not taking into account the people who come from different ethnic backgrounds or different religions. This is the British people. Yeah. We don't go to church anymore. So you can talk about Christian values. And actually, if you watch television or looked at the media in the run-up to Christmas, there is nothing Christian about it. It is all big sell, Marks and Spencer's, groaning tables of food, which actually make me sick. Yeah. You know, that Dawn French ad makes me really, really cross. Groaning tables of food when there are so many people who cannot afford to put, baked beans and toast on the table.
It is a tragedy.
It's shocking.
Blimey, you're not coming round on the 25th?
No, I won't be here.
You'll depress the life out of me. I was planning a caterpillar cake and everything.
It's sad that people aren't going to church as much. But when I say Christian values, I'm not necessarily saying, if you believe in God or not. I'm talking about the sort of morals behind what you're taught at school, Christian schools and church, etc.
But how many people do you think adhere to those or live by those thoughts?
Well, the point is, isn't it, Neil, that... What were you going to say, Neil?
This is the Grinch who stole Christmas, isn't it? Quite seriously, they're both right. The point is that the values of this is a fundamentally Christian company. Our laws, our culture is based, even though I quite accept, I speak as a practicing Christian, incidentally, are not filling the churches anymore. But the ethics of this country, the morality of this country, the approach of this country is primarily based around the Christian beliefs of many, many centuries. The problem we have here is, and the Blair government became obsessed with what it called multiculturalism. All that meant is that when people were welcomed into this country with the most incredible generosity from Muslim countries and countries of other beliefs,
Australians, New Zealanders, Canadians, Europeans.
They were encouraged, allowed to stay in ghettos. If you go to very large areas of this country, there is barely a of that particular religion in that area.
Very homogenous, sort of ghettoised communities.
Yes, and what you haven't got in this country, I'm afraid, it's a wonderful word, diversity, and a word I completely believe in, but integration has basically not happened. Now, about 6 months ago in France, a mullah went on television and called effectively for the destruction of the French state and that it must become a Sharia country instantly. The French government had him arrested and deported within about 48 hours back to Morocco, where he came from originally. Just a week or so ago, a Muslim mullah went on television in this country and said, this is going to be a Sharia country. We are taking over this country. I believe that is incredibly destructive. I think that is what's encouraging the sort of madness that leads to things like the arena bombing.
Most definitely. And concrete barriers at a Christmas market that's been going for 25 years. And by the way, let me stress that my argument is that these Christmas markets are for all Brits of all races, cultures and backgrounds. But the point is that in 2024, these Christmas markets are not safe. What does that tell you about the direction of our country? I think we'll come back to this with the papers. But next up, we have some good news. It's time for the Great British Giveaway. And your chance to win the equivalent of an extra £3,000 in your bank account each month for the next year. That is a whopping 36 grand in tax-free cash. Here are the details and how you get your hands on it.
This is Good Luck.
Developing tonight, it's been revealed a furious row broke out between King Charles and his son Prince Harry over the Duke's war on Fleet Street. Will Harry come to regret his legal action against the son, which starts in January? Plus, King Charles at 76. Will his youngest son spoil the party? So lots to get through. Kinsey Schofield with the big stories from America is next.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, let's talk about Prince Harry's legal action against the Sun newspaper in January. Some suggestion that his father, King Charles, discouraged this legal action many years ago.
Some suggestion. I mean, Mark, these words are pretty aggressive. Prince Harry, he claims, I was summoned to Buckingham Palace and specifically told to drop the legal actions because they have an effect on all the family. Prince Harry said. He continued, this was a direct request, or rather demand, from my father, Edward Young, and my father's private secretary, Clive Alderton. So, you know, clearly Prince Harry, I felt like those were some aggressive words when it came to how he was instructed to step back and to not pursue this legal action.
Indeed. And how do you see this panning out for the Duke of Sussex? Is it a mistake to go after papers like The Sun, or does he deserve his day in court? What do you think?
You know, even we're hearing reports here in the States, People magazine reporting that Meghan Markle wants to put all of this stuff to the side and she wants to focus on the future. So even if your wife is saying, let's move beyond this, let's move past this, I think that it might make things at home a lot more peaceful and, you know, a lot more tolerable, because court cases like this are not only expensive, but they attract a lot of negative attention, some positive. I also just think they're incredibly expensive. So I do imagine that it's more drama than it's worth.
Indeed. Now, this week, Kinsey, King Charles turned 76. But was it a happy birthday?
I thought it was a happy birthday. He was out and about. He loves to work on his birthday. I thought that he looked like he was happy, healthier than we've seen him in the past year. Look, his life reflects a commitment to service. That's why we saw him out on his birthday. Environmentalism is what he's going to be remembered for at the end of the day, and cultural preservation. And I think that he started to build that legacy really early on, and 76 looks really good on him.
Indeed. Can we talk about the political situation in America, which is now absolutely fascinating? The Trump earthquake has happened. He'll be returning to the White House in January after a landslide victory. He won by every possible metric, didn't he? And it could be that he had a very particular celebrity endorsement that we're only discovering since November the 5th. Which very, very famous man may have supported Trump without us realizing?
Well, this is one of my favorite conspiracy theories, I think, but Joe Rogan has joined a long list of people claiming that one of Donald Trump's biggest fans is perhaps current President Joe Biden. Rogan accused Biden of secretly hating Kamala Harris, VP Kamala Harris, and they also think that Joe perhaps voted for Donald Trump. There were also whispers that perhaps Jill, the First Lady, voted for Donald Trump because of the red jumpsuit that she wore on her way to vote. So he did look awfully gleeful when they met at the White House, to the point where even, both sides are pointing it out, how happy President Joe Biden looked when he sat down with Donald Trump.
Indeed. It's been a week and a half now since Trump's stunning victory. How is America responding to this political earthquake?
The celebrities are still having meltdowns. The mass exodus from X, everybody's moving to, I think it's called Blue Sky, but they're not leaving the country. The U-Hauls we're not seeing a mass rental of U-Hauls or purchase of moving boxes. Everybody's still in place.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. The bottom line is he's got a mandate to lead. Whether you love the guy or hate him, it's going to be an interesting and probably quite entertaining 4 years.
It certainly is for you and I. We're going to have plenty of conversations. We're going to have plenty of things and Truth Social posts to talk about going forward.
Most definitely. Kinsey, always a treat. You'll be the president of this show forever. My thanks to Kinsey Schofield, the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. She returns in a week's time. Check out her brilliant podcast, To Die For Daily, and her website of the same name. Thank you, Kinsey. Looking fabulous this evening. OK, folks, next up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages with full pundit reaction. See you in 2.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So the north-south split across the UK continues, with some cloudier skies and some patchy rain in the south, but some colder and wintry weather further north. We do have a weather front situated across the southern half of the UK. It continues to sink its way southwards through the rest of the day today, but those northerly winds bring us some colder conditions across parts of Scotland. We'll continue to see showers across the north and the west, and these likely to turn to snow and sleet over any high ground. Further south, though, that weather front continues to push its way southwards, leaving some clear skies to start the morning on Sunday across much of England and Wales, and quite widely a chilly start to the day on Sunday, temperatures widely in the low single figures, and some frost likely across parts of Scotland and northern England to start the day. Further south, though, generally quite a dry and bright start to the day once that weather front clears its way southwards. Some sunny spells across much of England to start the day on Sunday. For Wales, a little bit of a cloudier start, some outbreaks of patchy rain, and for Northern Ireland too, quite a bit of cloud around to start the day on Sunday. Northern parts of England into eastern parts of Scotland, though, a bright but chilly start to the day. Western Scotland continuing to see those wintry showers pushing in, and the northeast of Scotland as well, seeing those showers continuing through much of Sunday morning. Those showers again likely to turn to sleet and snow, particularly across any high ground of Scotland as we go through Sunday afternoon. Those cloudy conditions across Northern Ireland, and that area of rain continues to push its way eastwards into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into northern parts of England through Sunday afternoon. The south still holding on to some slightly milder air, so feeling pleasant in any sunshine here, but further north with those brisk northerly winds definitely feeling cold. That does mean a cold start to the day on Monday. Those wintry showers continuing to pack in across northern parts of Scotland. But for Northern Ireland, Wales into northern parts of England, we see this area of rain pushing in. And where that meets that colder air, they're likely to see some sleet and snow over the hills. Staying cold as we head in towards the middle part of next week, but there should be some sunshine around. But those temperatures feeling chilly for the time of year.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Exactly 10:30, time for this. Thank you, Connor, and we'll go for the Sunday Express now. OAPs will die as big freeze hits. Cruel ministers refuse to extend winter fuel deadline. MPs sound alarm as temperature dips. And I'm a Celeb's Colleen is up the creek without a paddle. Also, Starmer exclusive, wars fuel migration. OK, next up, we'll have a look at the Daily Star Sunday, I believe. And we have Cole, I'm not a celebrity. That's Colleen Rooney, who is the wife of Wayne Rooney, who has entered the jungle alongside boxer Barry McGuigan. I wish he'd been fighting Mike Tyson last night, would have been more entertaining. Doctors identify nasty new condition caused by our mobile phones. I'm afraid you have a serious case of bog bum, Mr. Jones. Social media addicts who take their smartphones for long sessions on the loo are being struck down with a painful condition known as piles. It's been renamed, it's been rebranded as bog bum. My goodness gracious. The mind boggles, doesn't it? Next up, The Observer. Fears grow over children at risk placed in illegal care homes. And Britain must choose trade with EU over Trump. Mail on Sunday now, as it's revealed that Britain has an astonishing 470 delegates at Climate Change Summit. That is a 5,000-mile round-trip flight. Call that net zero, Sir Keir. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of hypocrisy after it was revealed that the UK sent an incredible 470 delegates to the UN Climate Change Summit in Azerbaijan. Sunday Mirror, £1 billion boost for buses. Labour vows London-style services all over the country. Sounds like a good policy that we can all get behind. Sunday Telegraph, NHS alert over rise in strokes in middle age. Assisted dying legislation, a step towards non-voluntary euthanasia. Zelensky, Trump win will hasten the end of the war. Donald Trump's election victory means the war in Ukraine will end sooner than expected. Volodymyr Zelensky has admitted in an interview calling for a diplomatic solution. Also, the Sunday Telegraph, I too had a visit from police over tweet, says writer Julie Bindel, who is a feminist and women's rights campaigner, faced hate crime questions after complaint from a transgender man. Sunday Times, Sunak ignored top advisor's blunt memo warning against an early election. Labour plans Maloney-style migrant deals. Home Secretary set to pay millions to Vietnam and Kurdistan in effort to beat trafficking gangs. Farmers versus Starmer is the other story. We covered that earlier. The convoy of tractors and farm vehicles on their way to the Labour Party conference in Wales over the inheritance tax raid on farmers. Zelensky's resilience plan for his people is the other story. And last but not least, The Independent. William Hague hits out at two jobs rival Peter Mandelson. in their battle for the top job at Oxford University. Those are your front pages. For full reaction from the brilliant political website Guido Fawkes, we have Ellie Wheatley, veteran writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, and the former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. Well, look at that, Ellie. Sunday Express, OAPs will die as big freeze hits. This cut to the pensioners' winter fuel allowance is really a car crash in slow motion for this new government, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the most hated policies across the board, by the way. And the thing is, we saw Rachel Reeves's budget. It was so tax-heavy, £40 billion worth of tax rises. But also, they want to ramp up borrowing to 85 billion a year, right? So they're spending a lot. But this winter fuel allowance cut is only expected to raise about 1.5 billion a year. So why would you choose this as your sort of... This should not be a hill to die on, right? And it's upsetting people across the country. And it's a cruel cut. Now, whether or not it should be means tested, I do agree with. You know, obviously very rich pensioners should not perhaps be receiving the same allowance as a very poor one. But I mean, these sort of figures are unbelievable, really, and I think it is something that Labour will come to regret.
Well, indeed, this is in the Sunday Express. It's quite the headline, isn't it, Neil? OAPs will die as big freeze hits. Do Labour have an argument that they've inherited a broken economy and have no choice?
I don't believe that hype. I think it was an excuse that they used to effectively declare war on all their enemies. Because if you look at what they've done, they've attacked viciously groups of society that they don't believe will vote for them. And they have rewarded the people that is their power base. So massive pay rises to already very well-paid train drivers, people like that.
Junior doctors, the public sector, basically.
Yeah, anybody on the public sector is gold-plated because they believe you're going to vote Labour. But people like pensioners, who are traditionally, more traditional and do not vote in great numbers for Labour, the farming community that is going to be absolutely devastated. One of their most senior advisors, a guy called McTurnan, who I've known for years and years, openly said the other day, we should get rid of small farmers. This is a catastrophe for the traditions of farming in this country. And then you look at small businesses. They don't like small businesses because they're independent thinking entrepreneurs. They don't like big business, so they attack big business across the board. The only people who survived unscathed have been traditional public sector or trade unionists. It's like something out of the 1960s. Talk about Back to the Future.
Nina, Labour have looked after their own.
I don't agree with that. I absolutely don't agree with that. The thing is that they did inherit a huge deficit from the Tories. They did inherit a system which is completely broken. They did inherit a country which needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. And they inherited situations like the junior doctors' strike, the transport strike, which the Tories had kicked down the road, deliberately did not settle.
The average pay of a junior doctor is £80,000. The average, just listen to that number.
Now, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute.
70 to 80.
Is it not circa 30?
Hang on a minute.
No, nothing like.
Hang on a minute.
You really have to try very, very hard to find a junior doctor who earns as little as that.
That's not true. That's absolutely not true.
It could only be in their first year.
Can I just say...
Wait, let Neil finish his point and I'll come straight to you.
Yeah. It could only apply in their very first year, provided they had no specialty. The average pay of junior doctors is in the region of 80,000. Train drivers, 69,000. This isn't kicking it down the road.
Don't the junior doctors get to 80 eventually?
Hang on a minute.
No. It's the average pay.
Is that crazy over time?
I
Anyway,
just want to say, What Neil fails to recognise is the fact that these were disputes that had to be settled. That because of the cost of...
Simply by paying them what they wanted?
Can I just finish? I shut up while you were babbling on, so you can do the same for me for a little while, thank you.
Well, this is worse than Mike Tyson. This should be on Netflix. Pay-per-view.
They had to be...
I'm the influencer.
In the red corner, Nina Mitchkov.
The doctors' strike would try to redress the balance they had lost in real terms what they should have been earning over many, many years. They do a fantastic job. The NHS, if we need to save it, we need the doctors, we need well-trained doctors. And the trouble is that junior doctor is a complete misnomer, because that sounds like somebody who's 25 years old and, you know, green behind the ears and doesn't know what they're doing. No, you call a junior doctor until you're a consultant, for heaven's sake. And you can be in your 30s and 40s and still be called a junior doctor. So let's not just think it's... And by the way, if you got some major, God forbid, illness...
Thank you. Thank you for your care.
No. But if
Neil's fine. His body's a temple.
Would you be happy to ignore the junior doctors whose pay you had, and go to the pharmacy and get them to sort your heart out or whatever it is? No, you wouldn't. We all need them. And as for the train drivers, the Tories kicked that down the road. They did not want to settle, and they did not settle.
But the thing is, as soon as Labour gave in to the unions on the train drivers, they just asked for more immediately. There were more strikes. But there
have been no more strikes yet. So let's
because
just
Labour keep giving in and giving them more.
They're not giving them any more than they gave. They settled it, and that was it.
And when other unions strike, a precedent has been set.
Well, a precedent, they're perfectly entitled to go out and strike.
The civil servants, university lecturers, police, you name it.
The police certainly, and all of these people actually
but
do
where
deserve...
does all the money come from?
Your pocket.
Well, it comes from all of our pockets.
Exactly.
It comes from so what? But let's bring it back.
Growth was at 0.5% in July. It's now 0.1%. That's the so what. These policies are destroying economic growth, and this government is the party of growth, apparently.
The point is that we are 4 months into the government.
You'll have to flog that brooch soon.
But you only have to look at the OER report after the budget, right? GDP growth is going to go down.
Bring back Rishi Sunak.
They are 4 months into their term of office.
And so far they've tanked the economy.
You cannot turn it round in 4 months. You have got to steady it and then move forward. And it's not steady yet.
Does reducing economic growth involve steadying the economy, or inflation expectations to be high inflation for another year?
You need to steady it first before you can grow. It doesn't work like that.
What about Rachel Reeves then? She's the woman who comes into this and stands there.
First female chancellor.
And first female chancellor says, "Listen to me, I know what I'm talking about." Except it's just come out yet again that her CV is, in significant ways, untrue.
Actually, hold that thought, because that's what I'm putting to you at home and to my panel straight after the break. Is the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, a liar? We'll discuss that next, plus more front pages. Don't go anywhere.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
It seems that the younger generation's interest in literature is waning. Academics argue that educational policies have failed to encourage reading for pleasure, contributing to declining numbers of English literature students and a shift towards young adult books rather than classic novels. According to 2023 figures from the National Literacy Trust, the number of 8 to 18-year-olds who say they enjoy reading has sunk to its lowest level for almost 20 years, with a quarter fewer reading each day over that same time period. To share more with us about this topic, I'm joined now by the journalist Charlotte Lytton. Charlotte, welcome back. Lovely to talk to you again. Tell us your perspective on this issue. What is happening?
Well, speaking to academics, we can't deny, it seems, that there is a big problem here, and it starts right at school. As you read there, young children simply don't enjoy reading for pleasure as they did before. We can't deny that is also a massive part because of smartphones, because kids now are faced with all of these things vying for their attention. They just don't have to sit down and entertain themselves with a long book and nothing else as they did before. As we see from those figures with people going to study humanities at university, the decline is just going all the way because people simply are not interested in reading for pleasure as they were.
Do you get any feeling that education policy or that teachers are taking steps to counter this?
Well, there is a review of the curriculum going ahead right now, but school is a huge part of it. One of the things that has come up in this conversation is whether teachers now are dealing with crowd control, which means they can't simply encourage reading for pleasure because they're simply trying to get a hold of the students they have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, more front pages to come, but the brilliant Guido Fawkes website broke a story this week suggesting that the Chancellor Rachel Reeves may have been economical with the truth about her career as an economist. Well, Ellie Wheatley from Guido Fawkes is with us. First of all, happy 20th anniversary.
Thank you very much,
It's a brilliant political website that is loved by its loyal readership, isn't it? Because it's got all the juicy scoops.
It does, and actually viewership has gone up, especially since Labour's come into government, right? Because it's been so easy to attack them and expose them for their endless hypocrisy. But on Rachel Reeves, you know, she's always touted herself as an economist, and that's why she should be a chancellor, and that's why all of her policies make sense, even though most people are going, sorry, what?
Yeah, I mean, Bank of England economist is the new my father was a toolmaker.
Absolutely. So, to be fair, she was an economist at the Bank of England. However, she then goes on to say she was an economist at HBOS for 3 years, from 2006 to 2009. She's been saying that for years. I mean, she said that on her page when she was campaigning to become an MP, right? So she said that to get herself into Parliament initially in 2009, 2010. Anyway, a few weeks ago, Guido exposed that actually she was not an economist at HBOS. She was working in the complaints team, right? You know, was sort of doing menial tasks quite far away from the economist's desk. And so we screenshotted her LinkedIn at the time, which said I was an economist from 2006 to 2009. We put it to her team, who said she worked at HBOS with her, you know, in the capacity that her background was an economist, right? Anyway, this was just a few days before the budget. Sort of was swept under the rug, and a couple of weeks later, her team, or herself, we don't know, quietly changed her LinkedIn page to say retail banking. So it's gone from economist for 3 years to worked in retail banking.
And LinkedIn, of course, is a website where people put their CV on there so you can see what they've done.
Exactly. I mean, it's not a formal CV that you send into your employers, but it's you know, it tells people what you've done.
Yeah.
Now, listen, has she, I don't think you could say she'd lied, potentially, but she definitely has embellished the truth. She's exaggerated her background as an economist to prove to people that, A, in the first place, she should be elected into Parliament, and B, to obviously be a successful chancellor, you know, yeah. So I don't. My view is that it's wrong, and no one should be economical in the truth in the first place, especially politicians. You will get caught out by people like, you know, all of us. And I think, you know, it just feeds into you can't trust politicians.
Especially holier-than-thou politicians who said they were going to come in to clean up politics, like Sir Keir Starmer and his £100,000 worth of freebies. I mean, Neil...
Well, it wasn't £100,000.
It was. Since 2019, he's taken the most freebies of any MP in the House of Commons.
I don't think it was 100,000.
It's about 106,000.
Yeah, I think
the clothes were, I think...
About
it was
22 or something.
Yeah, that's it. But listen, Neil, if you were still the editor of the News of the World, you'd be all over this story like a rash, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. One of the important things is about the story you need to understand is she claimed that she was an economist with the Royal Bank of Scotland. In fact, it wasn't the Royal Bank of Scotland. It was one of the subsidiary banks, wasn't it? I can't remember which one it was now, whether it was NatWest or someone like that.
It was Lloyd's. She said she was an analyst at Lloyd's and, Halifax.
Yeah, the Halifax is the important bit. So it wasn't this huge conglomerate that was the Royal Bank of Scotland. Secondly, the words retail banking in this really matter, because retail banking is me, you and your auntie going into a branch and dealing over the counter. It's about personal banking. It's about your credit card.
It's about getting a bag of pound coins for your market stall, isn't it?
What it's not...
Or cash for the babysitter.
What it's not is economic policy.
No.
It's not about the economic movement and decisions of the bank. In other words, what she has done is totally over-egg and overinflate in a very deceptive way what her background is in relation to what she is now, the position she's got as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Does it matter? Yes, of course it matters. It matters on two issues. A, that she hasn't got the experience that people thought or she pretended. B, dishonesty is never a good look in politics. It's never a good look.
An unpopular budget which has affected and reduced economic growth, freezing pensioners, and now lies on her CV. Does she need to go?
No, she's not going to go. I mean, if you asked any politician about anything they'd ever said, you would struggle to find any of them who hadn't, been economical with the actuality, which is what a famous politician said some years ago.
Yes.
But her misinformation about her CV pertains to her job as Chancellor.
So that's what, 20 years ago? We're talking about a period of 3 years, 20 years ago. I am always for the truth, and I don't like that. It annoys me. Ellie doesn't know. I don't, and I didn't vote Labour. So I don't like that about her, but I'm afraid I'm cynical enough to think most people do that. And I've never had to write a CV in my life. And mine would always have been straight down the line, because I believe that you always get caught out. Or what is the point of it?
That's the
What is the point of it?
But the point is, I think your point is completely valid about it related to some period in the early 2000s. But the point is, pardon me, she's kept it up. She's kept this untruths.
And also, she only revised it after it was exposed by Guido that actually she wasn't an economist. So that's...
Well,
And also, I mean, I agree, it's very difficult to find people, especially in politics, who haven't, been economical with the truth or background. But she has always banged on, and so has Starmer, about being transparent and truthful and being filled with integrity, and bashing the Tories for doing the same. I mean, on her page, when she was standing to be a candidate, standing to be an MP in 2009, she literally goes, I was an economist at HBOS, and then I promised to provide transparency and integrity as an MP. On the same page. I mean, There
you go. I'm afraid guilty as charged. There you go. That is a slam dunk. Well, developing tonight, we've got a story that's just come in. It's the Sun newspaper and Kate Ferguson, who has revealed that Donald Trump's team is looking at plans to deport illegal migrants to, wait for it, Rwanda. That's right, this is a Sun on Sunday exclusive. The scheme, of course, was drawn up by the Tories, but ditched by Sir Keir Starmer when he became PM. Allies of Donald Trump has said his team is considering deporting illegal immigrants to a number of countries, including Rwanda. And this, Neil, would be hugely embarrassing to the Prime Minister if Rwanda goes ahead on the part of the Americans?
Yes.
I don't think so, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's similar to what the Prime Minister of Italy is, which we're going to come on to in the Times, who has similarly slashed illegal immigration, boat people to her country, not least because she has provided some deals whereby people can be kept in other countries, or at least prevented physically from crossing the border.
Couple of seconds, Nina. Is this bad news for Keir Starmer if Trump goes for Rwanda?
No, because why would we think Trump has any kind of more intelligent answer?
Yes, it would be bad news for Starmer.
Rwanda, I mean, good luck.
Straight answer to a straight question. That's how easy it is, Nina.
400 places, 10 million migrants, do the sums.
Listen, I'd love to talk to you more, but Josh Howie is next with headliners. Josh, what have you got for us?
We just got abundance of riches, a huge amount of news, Sunday newspapers, all out there. Labour's new immigration plan, the Twitter police story developing, Nick Dixon, Lewis Schaefer. There's going to be lots of physical affection.
Well, look, I know that the chemistry in that team is electric. Thank you, Josh. My thanks to the brilliant Ellie, the wonderful Nina, and the marvellous Neil. Please come back soon. I'll see you tomorrow for Mark Dolan tonight at 9. Josh Howie's next.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So the north-south split across the UK continues with some cloudier skies and some patchy rain in the south, but some colder and wintry weather further north. We do have a weather front situated across the southern half of the UK. It continues to sink its way southwards through the rest of the day today, but those northerly winds bringing some colder conditions across parts of Scotland. We'll continue to see showers across the north and the west, and these likely to turn to snow and sleet over any high ground. Further south, though, that weather front continues to push its way southwards, leaving some clear skies to start the morning on Sunday across much of England and Wales, and quite widely a chilly start to the day on Sunday, temperatures widely in the low single figures, and some frost likely across parts of Scotland and northern England to start the day. Further south, though, generally quite a dry and bright start to the day once that weather front clears its way southwards. Some sunny spells across much of England to start the day on Sunday. For Wales, a little bit of a cloudier start, some outbreaks of patchy rain, and for Northern Ireland too, quite a bit of cloud around to start the day on Sunday. Northern parts of England into eastern parts of Scotland, though, a bright but chilly start to the day. Western Scotland continuing to see those wintry showers pushing in, and the northeast of Scotland as well, seeing those showers continuing through much of Sunday morning. Those showers again likely to turn to sleet and snow, particularly across any high ground of Scotland as we go through Sunday afternoon. Those cloudy conditions across Northern Ireland, and that area of rain continues to push its way eastwards into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into northern parts of England through Sunday afternoon. The south still holding on to some slightly milder air, so feeling pleasant in any sunshine here, but further north with those brisk northerly winds definitely feeling cold. That does mean a cold start to the day on Monday. Those wintry showers continuing to pack in across northern parts of Scotland. But for Northern Ireland, Wales, into northern parts of England, we see this area of rain pushing in. And where that meets that colder air, they're likely to see some sleet and snow over the hills. Staying cold as we head in towards the middle part of next week, but there should be some sunshine around, but those temperatures feeling chilly for the time of year.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the fuck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The latest challenge.